You are good to go.
Hey, good morning. This is State and Local Government Committee. It is Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's, February 14th, 2022. And we have, I believe it's LD 1610, is that correct?
Yes.
Ends for public hearing scheduled for today. Before we get there, I see we have a quorum. I ask that legislators introduce themselves, starting with Representative Toole.
Good morning, Senator Baldacci, representing Matlack. I'm Will Toole. I represent Machias area plus Lubec and Eastport. And I hope I just said that unmuted.
You did.
Good.
Representative Randall Greenwood, good morning.
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Randy Greenwood. I represent House District 82, which are the towns of Litchfield, Monmouth, and my hometown of Wales in both Androscoggin and Kennebec counties.
Claxton.
Thank you, Senator Baldacci. My name is Ned Claxton, and I'm honored to serve the folks in Senate District 20, which includes Auburn, Minot, Mechanic Falls, Poland, and New Gloucester.
Great. Representative Downs, good morning.
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Kathy Downs. I represent District 130, which is Bucksport and Orrington. Welcome.
Good morning. Representative Mark Bryant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Mark Bryant from Wyndham. I represent House District 24, by the town of Wyndham. Good morning, all.
Senator Kim Rosen, good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. I'm Kimberly Rosen, Senate District 8. My district goes from Castine through Brewer all the way up to Lincoln, and I live in Bucksport.
Representative Walter Reisman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Representative Walter Reisman, and I proudly serve in District 69, which includes Bridgeton, Harrison, and Denmark. Thank you.
Thank you. So I just want to go through some of the basic rules for a public hearing. The committee is assembled electronically.
Oops, you froze up, sir.
Oh, Representative Ian Matlack, my co-chair, I apologize.
Oh, no worries. We seem to forget somebody at some point every time. Good morning. My name is Ann Matlack. I represent House District 92, which includes the communities of Cushing, Thomaston, South Thomaston, St. George, Matinicus, Creehaven, and the Muscle Ridge Islands.
Great, thank you, Co-Chair Matlack. My name is Joe Baldacci. I represent Senate District 9, which is the city of Bangor and the town of Hermon. I see we have a hand up from Senator Ned Claxton.
Just to mention the staff too.
Yes, thank you. So, and we are ably assisted by Lynn Caswell. Good morning, Lynn. You're on mute, but thank you. And Cheryl McGowan, our committee clerk. Thank you, Cheryl. And we love the background that you have today.
Thank you.
Very
And we have Representative Head with us now as well.
Representative Head, could you introduce yourself as well?
My name is Frances Head. I live in Bethel, Maine. I represent District 117, 23 towns and townships in Franklin and Oxford County.
Thank you, Representative Head. So the meeting is currently being live streamed on the committee's YouTube channel. That means anyone who is a participant in the meeting via Zoom can be seen and also heard if their microphone is unmuted. People on the Zoom meeting waiting to testify cannot be seen or heard until they are called upon to speak. This meeting will be recorded and available on the committee's YouTube channel soon after the meeting has concluded. If Zoom Square is not the name you use to register to testify, it may be a bit of a challenge for us to identify you. So please make sure the identifier is correct. A reminder to members of the committee about the use of the Zoom chat function. This function is not to be used for substantive discussions by anyone. You should know that the chat window can be viewed by any person taking part in this meeting as a participant. Participants include members of the committee, staff, and any members of the public during the time that they have been promoted to participant for the purpose of providing testimony to the committee. All questions of persons testifying will be made through the chair. For each bill heard today, I and my co-chair will call on sponsors and co-sponsors to speak first. When called upon, you will be promoted from attendee to participant. After presentation by sponsors and co-sponsors, we will call on members of the public based on how they're registered to testify for the bill, against the bill, or neither for nor against the bill, but wishing to provide information. When you are called upon, I'll ask you to state your name, your place of residence, and your organization, if any. And after you're done speaking and there are no more questions, I or my co-chair will return you to the attendee status and call upon the next person registered to testify. So, any preliminaries that you want to discuss first, Lynn, before we go to the sponsors?
I think the sponsor of the bill, Representative Talbot Ross, will present the bill to us, and we can discuss afterwards. I believe she has an amendment, but she can tell us about that.
All right, I assume that. So if Cheryl, you could bring in the sponsor. Are we going to be able to screen share the amendment?
I will leave that to the sponsor there to discuss the amendment before, per
Okay.
her instructions. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, Representative Rachel Talbot Ross. It was great to see you among many other legislators last week. Look forward to seeing you in person as well. You have the floor.
Thank you so very much, and likewise, Senator Baldacci, Representative Matlack, and honorable members of the Joint Standing Committee on State and Local Government. My name is Rachel Talbot Ross. I represent House District 40, which is part of Portland, and I serve as the Assistant House Majority Leader. I want to thank you for the opportunity to present LD 1610, an act to promote equity in policymaking by enhancing the state's ability to collect, analyze, and apply data. As legislators, we know how important data are when it comes to informing our decision-making. And we all know how difficult and frustrating it can be when the data we need to make the best decisions possible are not available to us. LD 1610 aims to ensure that we, the legislature, and other policymakers have the information we need available to us during this process. It would strengthen the capacity of our state departments and agencies to collect, analyze, and share information for the purposes of policymaking. I submit this bill as a companion to LD2, a bill that passed out of this committee and became law last year. LD2 created a process to implement racial impact statements as part of our legislative process, and the legislature is currently in the process of implementing a pilot racial impact statement project as a result. This is an enormous step forward towards improving our policy outcomes and making our legislative process more equitable. However, if racial impact statements are going to fulfill their potential as a tool for policymakers, we need data to inform the analysis. We need a fuller, more accurate picture of the people of Maine and their experiences. LD 1610 will achieve that. I do want to acknowledge that the committee received 2 versions of the proposed amendment since Friday. And in order to avoid any further confusion, I am attaching the version. I respectfully request that the committee move forward. So we'll go through it. First, the bill creates 2 state demographic analyst positions within the Office of the State Economist. Currently, that office only has 2 staff members, which is not enough to meet the needs of policy and decision makers or the people of Maine. These positions will provide the public and leaders with a better understanding of our total population and how it is changing over time. Second, the bill creates standards for how data is collected, stored, and accessed by requiring the state's chief information officer to establish a state data governance program. It describes the principles that must guide this program, including commitments to transparency and privacy. The CIO, the Chief Information Officer, will be required to consult with the Permanent Commission on the status of racial, indigenous, and tribal populations to further identify ways to center racial equity in the data governance program. The bill also requires collaboration between the CIO and the state archivist to develop a plan to manage and retain records. Third, the bill directs the CIO and the Permanent Commission to jointly report its findings and recommendations back to this committee by February 15th, 2023, and empowers the committee to report out legislation based on that report. Achieving racial equity and equity for all requires intentional action informed by accurate research and analysis. LD 1610 will help us break down the silos of state government to ensure we are collecting, sharing, and using data in order to make the best possible policies for the people of Maine. I want to thank a number of folks who helped get us to this point, specifically Anya Trundy and Amanda Rector in our Department of Administrative and Financial Services, Fred Britton, who serves as the Chief Information Officer in our Office of Information and Technology, Will Howard, Joby Thoyel, James Mayo, John Brannigan, Dr. Meadow Dibble. They all had active engagement in writing this bill. As you know, it was a concept draft. We moved it into what the amendment says today, and I just wanted to thank them for their active engagement in writing this bill. I can walk you through the correct amendment at any time and answer any of your questions.
I think, Representative Ross, it might be helpful for you to hit the highlights of the amendment.
Sure.
You don't have to, certainly don't read us the amendment, but if you could give us the major bullet points that are in it, that would be great. I also want to take the moment to introduce Representative Lynn Copeland, who's joined us. Representative Copeland, good morning. Can you introduce yourself?
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Lynn Copeland, and I'm proud to represent the folks in House District 14, which is coastal and downtown Saco. Thank you.
Representative Ross, if you could give us the highlights from the amendment that are you think are particularly important, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. Welcome, Representative. As I said during my testimony, the amendment does exactly those three things. What I wanted to do is to alleviate any confusion. We posted the right amendment to the bill that I've described in my testimony, and then we corrected the amendment. So it'd be easier just to talk about the differences in the two amendments. As you've heard, the details in my testimony are what we are moving forward. So the amendment that was first posted, again, is what I've just reported on. When we went to correct it, I really wanted to add a subsection 8 on information technology in order to assure that any future data systems that the state brought online also were accountable to the data governance program. I heard from our state archivist, and I did hear from our chief information officer once I added that component, subsection 8 to 5 MRSA 1973. I confused things too much, basically, is what happened. Because first of all, it would be very, very costly, I understand. The second is that what we're trying to do is alleviate the silos where data is collected in the state and make sure that there is a repository that can be easily accessed by all with attention to privacy matters. But it may not work because all state agencies are not equal. And so to require the Department of Transportation, to collect different information that's not relevant to this doesn't make any sense. So I removed that section because it needs further research. We cannot just make that a blanket because, again, all state agencies are not equal in the data that they collect. So I I apologize for that. I thought I was being mindful of keeping our data governance program consistent throughout the lifespan. And what I did is take a misstep. So
Thank you for explaining all of that. And I think both versions of the amendments have been circulated to all the committee members. Are there questions by members of the committee? Representative Ross? Representative Toole? You're on mute, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is probably a little basic at this point, but I guess I'm curious to see what kind of data or what data are you looking to collect and from who?
So thank you, Representative, for that question, because that's exactly the point of the bill. When we lost our state planning office, we actually lost one of the areas in which information was collected and stored. Now, really, the public has no way of accessing one repository of data. We do not have a state demographer. And although we do have within the state's economist office, there are 2 positions that do collect demographic information. But that's exactly the questions that we need answered through a state governance program, data governance program. What is it that we collect? Who has access to it? How does the public know that transparency and privacy are being upheld? Where is it stored? And what data is collected from one department to the next? So I can't actually answer your question, Representative, because that's what this bill is trying to do, is to direct our Chief Information Officer to bring a governance program together so that there is some uniformity in the quality of the data we collect, and that it is accessible for policymakers and the public alike. These are questions none of us can answer right now, because it is it depends on who you ask and what department you ask. And our quality of data suffers because we cannot answer those questions.
Thank you very much.
Hey, are there any other questions? Representative Matlack.
Thank you, Senator, and good morning, Representative Talbot Ross. Good to see you again. I was very happy to see that the position of the state economist was being highlighted and was being given more resources that are desperately needed. So you did have the opportunity to talk with the state economist, and her input into how this position, where this position should be housed and how it should operate are things that she agrees with.
Thank you for the question, Representative. It's very good to see you as well. Yes, Amanda Rector, who is the state's economist, was actively engaged and participated in every conversation about the development of this amendment, about this bill. And it was through her that we learned about the shortcomings of that office. You know, Ms. Rector explained to us that while part of her duties do include the collection and analysis of demographic information, we do not staff this office nearly enough. And for us as policymakers and for the public to be able to rely on good data, which we have, this is by no means suggesting that we don't, but is it across systems? Is it probably the best that we can produce? I would say no, that it's not. So yes, Ms. Rector informed the writing of this bill and provided us with a sense of the cost to add positions to that office.
Thank you very much.
My overarching question, Representative Ross, would be: what is our ultimate goal? What do we want to see the state? I understand, I heard what you said, but what ultimately do you think is the good that's going to happen when we have this expanded data?
Yeah, I mean, this bill merely strengthens the state's capacity to collect, analyze, and share data that's uniform across systems. We again, when we lost our state planning office, we lost a lot in terms of that collection, analysis, and distribution of good data.
Other questions or comments? Representative Matlack?
Thank you very much. Thank you for letting me have another question. Representative Talbot Ross, so this is not necessarily new data that will be collected. This is not data that particularly that, although we may be missing data that we will be adding to the system, but this is putting it into a place where it can be easily accessed and where it can be dispersed in a way that is understandable to all the departments, so that it's usable in many different directions. Is that correct?
Thank you, Representative. It is that and more. What the Chief Information Officer has explained is that our state lacks a data governance program that has standards and quality improvement mechanisms built in. We need a governance program in order to ensure that the data that we're collecting and utilizing and then making available to the public is within a meets the quality protocols and standards that will make it uniform across the state. We currently don't have a data governance program. So that is in one easy answer. That's what this bill does, is it creates a data governance program, it codifies it, and allows us to hire staff that will make that program successful so that the public and policymakers know that the data that is being collected is at a certain quality level and that it can be trusted and used in ways that we cannot do now, that we do not do now. So I think the key words, Representative, is it's a data governance program. That's what we're getting ready to codify if this committee believes it's necessary.
Thank you.
Representative Copeland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Talbot Ross, for bringing forth this important legislation. It sounds to me like it really matches and will be helpful in our when we passed LD2, the oh my goodness, I'm blanking, but you know,
okay.
The racial impact statement.
Racial impact statement. Thank you. So what I want to be sure of is, we're all concerned about our data and what is collected and what is known about us. So I wanted to make sure that there's no information that's going to be particular to individuals. So we're just gathering unassociated data. Is that correct?
Thank you for the question, Representative. We collect data of all means and matters, and so no, not necessarily. One of the things that the bill, data governance program, will do is it builds in a respect for privacy, but it also allows for one record to be kept on individuals who are applying to multiple systems, and so it will decrease the number of times an individual would have to give their personal data by streamlining the data collection process. So for instance, in Health and Human Services, if you were applying for any particular program under a data governance program, you would give that information, that personal information. But then in subsequent application processes throughout all of DHHS, you may not have to repeat giving all of that information because there'll be a record of your personal information that is aligned across the various divisions and departments within a system. So it is protective in that in one way, but it also helps align data in another way. Furthermore, and I must emphasize that this data governance program is necessary not just to complete racial impact statements. That is one of the benefits. But the state, regardless of that tool, the state needs to codify standards and record keeping and align those with good governance. So this is not just because of racial impact statements. The entire state of Maine will benefit with this data governance program. It is a necessary component to the data that we keep, and to be able to describe to the people of Maine in demographic terms who we are. So it goes way beyond the collection of racial and ethnic data.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. May I have a follow-up?
Yes, go ahead.
So I understand that it's great to have information so people don't have to repeat everything and all that. So I'm not against, that's already information that we gather. So that's just a little convenience for people. But in terms of reports and things that are, we want to be transparent, but we want to hold on to our privacy. So would people be able to look up individuals, or would any of the reports identify any individuals? I'm just trying to be careful, that people's privacy is protected. I understand that we need to gather the information. I understand the value of it. I mean, there's no question in that regard. I just want to make sure, and I'm sure that that's part of what the commission is doing, because you're talking about setting privacy things up. But I just want to make it clear that these are important things to consider. So is that information going to be available to the public?
So I actually, thank you, Representative. I would actually, pass that question on to our Chief Information Officer, Fred Britton. He can explain the levels of accessible data. But if you look at in the amendment under Section 3 of 5 MRSA, subsection 1973, it talks about information technology data governance, and it talks about implementation of a data governance program must include, and then it lists 4 components. So this data governance program must include establishing data project priorities, ensuring data privacy, compliance, and best practices are followed, developing data structure policies to ensure best data quality, alignment, and availability across systems, and 4, establishing data sharing policies and agreements. So while we can't name that right now, that is what the data governance program will do for the state of Maine, is to make sure those 4 key components of the way that we collect, analyze, and share data has been done so with the highest quality standards and by respecting federal and state privacy laws.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's what I needed to hear.
Absolutely.
I'm going to step off in a minute, but Senator Claxton, you have the
Thank you,
floor.
Mr. Chair.
Then I'll step off and turn it over to Representative Matlock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, Representative Talbot Ross. My question is, in your conversations with the folks in information technology, you may have come across the fact that different departments are at different places as far as their own internal governance structure. Is this bill designed to replace those or to establish a floor in terms of expectations? I'm particularly familiar with the folks at the MHDO, and they have a very specific and well-developed governance around the issue of privacy. So I just wanted to make sure that that we respected that some divisions, departments have done a lot of their own work, and see if that was part of your thinking. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator, and good morning to you. Absolutely. There are some departments that are certainly far ahead of others. Some of this is about capacity within certain divisions and departments. But yes, it would be done with respect to work that's already been put in place. It doesn't, I think it tries to honor that and again, put it under one umbrella called the state's data governance program. I would say that the chief information officer, as we were writing this bill, explained something that I did not know, which was each department has a privacy officer. Well, it has that as part of duties. And so working with those privacy officers, working with each division or department within different state agencies, it will be made kind of whole, if you will, by putting all of that under this data governance program. So not, as I said in the beginning, not all departments collect the same type of information, nor should they. Not all departments will be able to share information across systems or to the public, nor should they. But we do need to have a governance program that elevates the quality of our data collection, analysis, and distribution at the right level across the board. We need to get everyone to those same standards. So you are right, Senator.
Thank you for that answer.
Thank you, Senator Claxton. Are there any further questions for Representative Talbot Ross? Seeing none, I will ask, I believe Senator Miramont is here. He's neither for nor against, but he is a senator, so we will allow him to speak first. Do we have, Cheryl, do we have Senator Claxton with, Senator Miramont with us? No? Okay, that's fine. If he arrives, then we'll let him speak. Otherwise, we'll, if you could bring across several of the folks who have signed up to speak, we'll start hearing from them. I see that.
Would you like to hear from Anya Trundy first? She's from DAFS.
Oh, certainly. Let's hear from Ms. Trundy first, and then, yes, please.
There she is.
Wonderful.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Trundy, and welcome back to State and Local Government.
Thank you very much.
If you could introduce yourself to us and present your statement, that'd be great.
Yes, absolutely. Senator Baldacci, Representative Matlack, and honorable members of the Joint Standing Committee on State and Local Government. My name is Anya Trundy. I am the Chief of Legislative Affairs and Strategic Operations for the Department of Administrative and Financial Services. And I come before you this morning to offer testimony in support of LD 1610, an act to promote equity in policymaking by enhancing the state's ability to analyze and apply data. DAFS has worked closely with Representative Talbot Ross and a group of interested parties to craft the legislation before you today. Initially, when Representative Talbot Ross reached out to DAFS about this initiative, her interest was primarily in the state economist's office. However, the state economist's office works exclusively with existing publicly available data sets. The state economist's office is an office of two and does not engage in independent data collection. So attentions quickly shifted to the untapped potential of the massive amounts of data siloed within state departments and agencies. However, the majority of this data wasn't collected with the intention of analyzing it for meaningful racial and demographic insights. Therefore, much of it isn't linked with racial and demographic data or in a usable, queryable format. That's why 1610 would codify charging the state's chief information officer with establishing a data governance program. A data governance program is a framework of guiding principles and best practices applied across all departments and agencies to reshape how the state of Maine collects, manages, shares, and protects the data it holds. Design and implementation of a data governance program for Maine state government was already being considered by the chief information officer. As state government collects greater volume of data, it has become essential that all information be handled safely and appropriately. Additionally, recent federal funds have been earmarked to improve cybersecurity and online citizen access. With some upfront intentional design as laid out in this bill, work that Maine IT was planning to undertake regardless can be harnessed to yield racial and demographic data to inform our policy decisions and improve how the state delivers services. In addition, 1610 establishes the state economist in statute and adds 2 headcount to the office, one for a demographic analyst and another for a communications associate. It's a quirk of the existing statute that the state economist has never been established in statute, yet duties and responsibilities assigned to the state economist throughout. These staff additions will increase the office capacity to focus dedicated to demographic data and improve the office's ability to make more information publicly available. Thank you for allowing me to testify before you today. I'm happy to take any questions from the committee at this time, and also to anything that I can't answer in sufficient detail. I'll ensure that the state economist, Amanda Rector, and the information officer, Fred Britton, are available to you for the work session. My testimony was meant to encompass both of their interests as members of DAFS.
Thank you very much. And we look forward to chatting with them at the work session. Representative Toole, you have a question for Ms. Trundy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess, Ms. Trundy, you mentioned earlier in your testimony that the Chief Information Officer, I think I have the term right, was already looking at doing a policy, for lack of a better term, or updating the state's approach to data collection and management and such. One, could you go into that a little more? And 2, how does that sync up with this legislation? Or I guess what I'm saying is legislation necessary, or is this something that you've already included in budgets past and coming in the future?
Thank you for the question, Representative. I think what I would say about this is that this was something that was already in the sights of the Chief Information Officer and Maine IT. This is a direction that a lot of states are moving in terms of establishing data governance policies, because it's a best practice, particularly as the amount of data that states and any government really collects and just continues and continues to amass. And so this is a direction that the Chief Information Officer and Maine IT were already looking at how to navigate in this direction. To the second part of your question, I would say it probably wouldn't have been necessary for in order to implement a data governance policy at large for there to be statutory change. The CIO thought it's that authority already exists, but what this does is it puts that emphasis on the collection of the racial and the demographic data and centers it within that program as well.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Toole. Are there further questions for Ms. Trundy? There being none, thank you, Ms. Trundy, and we look forward to seeing you at the work session.
Thank you very much.
We have a few people signed up to speak with us today. We'll go alphabetically as best we can. Abigail Bradford, please, if you could identify yourself. You're on mute right this second. Identify yourself and then present part of your testimony, please.
Thank you, Representative Matlack, and good morning to the members of the committee. My name is Abigail Bradford, and I am the Outreach Manager for Maine Conservation Voters. Today, I'm testifying on behalf of our organization in support of LD 1610. MCV is a statewide organization that represents more than 13,000 members and supporters. We are dedicated to protecting Maine's environment and our democracy by making conservation, climate, equity, and voting rights political priorities. LD 1610 will ensure that Maine has the data needed to support equitable policies, public access, and engagement. It builds on the state's commitment to centering equity in the legislative process affirmed through LD2 last year and is a priority of both the Vision for an Equitable Maine and the Coalition on Racial Equity. LD 1610 will provide the public and Maine's leaders with a better understanding of our population and how it is changing over time. It will also set up standards for how data is collected, stored, and accessed by establishing a state data governance program that will work across state government and improve transparency and privacy. LD 1610 is an important first step towards smarter data collection and use in Maine. Without comprehensive data, policymakers cannot determine whether disparities exist in our state, identify which communities are impacted, or understand the scope of those problems. Collecting and tracking higher quality information about Maine communities will lead to better policy decisions. In order for racial impact statements to give lawmakers a full picture of how proposed laws will impact different racial groups, we need better data about populations in Maine today. LD 1610 will achieve those aims. Maine Conservation Voters supports this bill and urges you to vote ought to pass. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present this testimony.
Thank you, Ms. Bradford. Do we have any questions for Ms. Bradford this morning? There being none, we appreciate your testimony. Thank you very much. Desti Holman Sprague, if you could introduce yourself and present your testimony, please.
Of course, thank you. My name is actually Quinn Gormley. Miss Holman Sprague got pulled away this morning, so I'm here to deliver her testimony.
I'm sorry, say your name again, please.
Quinn, Quinn, Gormley, Gormley.
Thank you very much. If you could please proceed then.
Thank you. Senator Baldacci, Representative Matlack, and members of the Joint Standing Committee on State and Local Governments. On behalf of the Maine Women's Lobby, the Maine Transgender Network, and Equality Maine, we are here today to speak in support of LD 1610, and we thank Representative Talbot Ross for sponsoring this bill. One of the challenges of a state that is significantly white is the limited access to disaggregated data. In some instances, data is presented in the aggregate without breakdowns for subpopulation, in order to protect the privacy and identity of people who may be part of very small populations. This is especially true when the data is related to sensitive topics such as experiences or perpetuation of crime or mental health needs. However, there are many places where data simply hasn't been collected or presented in a disaggregated form because it is not the habit to do so. And doing so requires an investment in technology and updated surveying practices and data analysis. Presenting data in the aggregate can sometimes serve to obscure the real impact of an issue, making the data itself a type of misinformation. If 10 people are surveyed for a disease and 5 of them have it, that means that half the population has been impacted. But if all 5 of those impacted people live north of Bangor and all 5 of the people not impacted live south of it, there may be a very different story to tell when we disaggregate the data by region. LD 1610 seeks to correct this flaw in our system by setting up standards for how data is collected, stored, and accessed, and by creating principles to guide this program and provide appropriate and ongoing oversight. We would like to make one suggestion as this work moves forward. As organizations which represent people who experience not only racism, but also the effects of misogyny, sexism, homophobia, and transphobia, we see the critical value of gathering data on race and ethnicity, but also on gender identity and LGBTQ status. More nuanced data sets related to gender identity, not only male and female sex, but non-binary and transgender status, for example, allow us to better understand the ways that racism, sexism, and homophobia and transphobia can work together to create harms. For instance, when we look at data sets related to sexual violence, we would see in Maine that 20% of people experience rape or attempted rape in their lifetime. When we disaggregate by gender, we see that number for women grows to over 37%. For trans people, that number climbs to over 50%. When we add race, we see that for trans people who are multiracial, it grows to over 59% and 65% for trans people who are Native. There continue to be places across Maine population level surveys that do not even share data by gender. And we know that collecting LGBTQ status is so essential to public health data sets that it is now part of the national census. We want to ensure that we design and build data systems that account for the many ways that racism, sexism, and transphobia affect the lives of Mainers. When we don't know the scope of the problems we are trying to solve and who is really being affected by them, our solutions will always come short of where we would like them to be. LD 1610 is an opportunity to rethink the kinds of information we gather and how to ensure that our data is truly a tool to transform systems and improve lives. We hope to see this bill move forward and hope that our state systems continue to find ways to ensure that all of our community members count and are counted. We're happy to answer any questions you have and hope that you will support LD 1610. Thank you.
Thank you, Quinn. Do we have any questions for Quinn this morning? There being none, we appreciate you appearing before our committee today. Next, we have Jim Hanna. Mr. Hanna, if you could introduce yourself and present your testimony, please.
Good morning. Thank you. Honorable Matlock and members of the committee. My name is Jim Hanna. I live in Portland. I'm Executive Director of the Cumberland County Food Security Council. I represent a diverse food system coalition that agrees our country's history of inequitable policy implementation is at the root of today's poverty and food insecurity. As a community, we can make different choices in order to take better care of each other. Equitable policy choices need to be informed by accurate data collected by government agencies and publicly funded organizations that serve the community. And the aggregation of that data supports positive policy implementation. So CCFSC, my organization, draws a direct link between economic and racial justice. Our nation's history contains repeated instances of intentional policy choices resulting in economic disparities between people identified as white or Black. The resulting inequality in our economic system impacts not just people of color, but is a foundation of poverty that afflicts everyone who can't put nourishing food on the table. This poverty is a burden on us all. It takes away our humanity and makes us complicit in oppression that punishes people for nothing they did wrong. LD 1610 is a step toward repairing an economy that does not serve us all. How can we fix something if we don't know how it is broken? We must be able to identify and measure disparate racial impacts of the policies we implement. When well-known federal programs like Social Security and the GI Bill were written with provisions to limit participation by people of color, no one was collecting data on the racial impacts of those programs that we still live with today. When targeted groups have their civil rights impeded, people need the data to know when and how that happened and how to prevent that from continuing to happen. I'm currently working on a team that is preparing a report on LD 870, Resolve, directing the Permanent Commission on the status of racial, indigenous, and Maine tribal populations to study the impact of policies regarding agriculture, access to land, access to grants, and access to financing on African and American and indigenous farmers in the state. Our work to develop recommendations would be much simpler if there was a centralized place we could find data that represents the experience of people suffering inequitable policy consequences. For example, USDA Ag Census defines a category of producer as Black or African American. It does not distinguish whether these farmers are US born or immigrants from Africa recently arriving in Maine. As we see that the percentage of Black farmers increased significantly over the past 20 years in the census, these subtle distinctions in the data can help have a significant impact on policy development and the design of effective programs and the resources that we put into the system. LD 1610 can provide structure for helping us understand how our policy choices, intended or not, are the true instruments of oppression that create poverty and many other negative outcomes for people of color. Knowing that making some people poor is a collective choice through bad policy, we can avoid that mistake. Having accurate information to help us prevent disparate negative outcomes for people of color will liberate us all from maintaining these oppressive systems. That is why LD 1610 has the potential to free racial minorities from injustice and transform our communities. So that's why we are testifying in support of LD 1610. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you today. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hanna. Do we have any questions for Mr. Hanna this morning? Seeing none, thank you for appearing before our committee today, sir. Next, we have Joby Thoyello. Mr. Thoyello, if you could introduce yourself and present your testimony, please.
Thank you. Morning, Senator Baldacci, Representative Matlack, and members of the Joint Standing Committee on State and Local Government. My name is Joby Thoyello. I'm a senior policy advocate at Maine Equal Justice. I also have the honor of serving as a commissioner on the Permanent Commission on the Status of Racial, Indigenous, and Tribal Populations. and I help to coordinate the Maine Coalition on Racial Equity, or CORE for short. While all three entities, Maine Equal Justice, the Permanent Commission, and CORE, are in support of this bill, I'm testifying now on behalf of CORE, which strongly supports LD 1610. CORE is a group of Maine organizations committed to advancing racial equity and justice through legislative education and training, and through advocacy and government accountability. My testimony lists are the members, and I won't spend time reading all of them, but I hope you have that in front of you. The concept of racial equity is present in countless contexts, from interpersonal dynamics to the policies and practices of large public and private institutions. As you know as well as most, it is also relevant to most, if not all, areas of law and policy. The members of our coalition work in specific areas of law and policy, given our various missions. And while we each strive to work to improve racial equity within our specialized areas of focus, we have decided that instead of trying to work together as a coalition on bills in each of these areas, we come together and use our collective voice when we see pieces of legislation that cut across all of the areas we work in. We ask ourselves whether a bill will have a structural impact on the state's ability to center racial equity in programs and decision-making. For example, in 2019, the first year we worked together, it was to support and to promote the establishment of the Permanent Commission. Last year, we championed LD2, the bill to implement racial impact statements in the legislature. LD 1610 is another such bill. With the goals of establishing standards across state government for how data is collected, stored, and accessed by the public, and providing the public and policymakers with a better understanding of our population and how it's changing over time, we see this bill as an important complement to the goals of last year's LD2. Valid and informative data are needed to understand the scope of social, economic, and health inequities in our state. Careful examination of that data will help identify the factors contributing to them, and ongoing monitoring of that data is critical to ensure progress toward comprehensive, long-term reductions in disparities. While we support the sponsor's amendment in general, we particularly appreciate the section instructing the Chief Information Officer to work with the Permanent Commission on the status of racial, Indigenous, and tribal populations. We see this as an important partnership, given the bill's goal to enhance equity and the Commission's charge to examine inequities, engage with historically disadvantaged racial and tribal populations, and through that engagement to identify solutions. Progress is often marked by the construction of new infrastructure that facilitates new ideas and better decision-making. We believe this includes the development of data infrastructure, and LD 1610 is a thoughtful and important first step in that development. We hope you will vote ought to pass on this important bill. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions for Mr. Thorilow? Seeing none, we appreciate you being here with us this morning, sir.
Thank you.
Next, Megan Sway. Good morning, Ms. Sway. If you could introduce yourself and present your testimony, please.
Thank you. Good morning, Representative Matlack and distinguished members of the Committee on State and Local Government. My name is Megan Sway, and I'm Policy Director at the ACLU of Maine. On behalf of our members, I'm here today to support LD 1610. You've heard a lot in the 130th legislature about the importance of collecting data and that we manage what we measure. And what's happening now is that different departments are measuring things differently or not measuring at all. So the level of management differs depending on different data systems. We support this legislation in part because of what you've heard before, that this is a continuation of LD2, but I'm here today as the ACLU, an organization that is dedicated to ensuring that the promises of the Bill of Rights are respected, to really applaud the inclusion of privacy as central to this bill, and to ensure that at the outset, as we look at all these different departments and who's doing what, that we really consider privacy before we get going on this merging of projects. To us, the collection of data is super important, but also citizens' rights to privacy are also constitutionally protected. And so for that reason, we support this bill and urge you to vote ought to pass. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Sway. Are there any questions this morning for Ms. Sway? Representative Reisman. You're on mute, sir.
Okay,
There you go.
try this again. Thank you, Madam Chairman. And thank you for your testimony, Ms. Sway. Could you tell me, in your testimony, you mentioned that there are some departments that don't measure things at all. Do you have any examples of what that might include?
That might have been rhetorical excess, not reading my testimony and going off the cuff. Every department is measuring something, but how they're measuring it, how they're retaining it, there's not a unified system. And so there may be departments that are not measuring things that this committee would expect them to measure. I don't know. And I apologize for the rhetorical flourish that may have been inaccurate because I was not going off my testimony.
Okay.
No problem. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any further questions for Ms. Sway? Seeing none, thank you very much for being here. Next, Morgan Pottle Urquhart, if you could introduce yourself and present your testimony, please.
Yes, good morning. Senator Baldacci, Representative Matlack, and honorable members of the Joint Standing Committee on State and Local Government. My name is Morgan Pottle Urquhart, and I am the Acting Communications Manager of the Permanent Commission on the Status of Racial, Indigenous, and Tribal Populations. I'm honored to offer this testimony in support of LD 1610, an act to promote equity in policymaking by enhancing the state's ability to collect, analyze, and apply data. We extend deep gratitude to Assistant House Majority Leader, Representative Rachel Talbot Ross, for introducing this urgent bill. Much of the data critical to the Permanent Commission's mission of examining racial disparities in Maine exist in incompatible silos within separate government agencies, if it exists at all. We are extremely grateful to this committee for its work in supporting LD2's path to becoming state law. One thing we have learned through that process for certain is in order for racial impact statements to give lawmakers a full picture of how proposed laws will impact different racial groups, we need better data about populations in Maine today. We believe LD 1610 will ensure the essential process of adequately collecting data and analyzing it needed to improve outcomes for Mainers across our great state. Racial disparities are a ubiquitous and ever-present problem, persistent throughout all aspects of public life. The problems are real, they are pervasive, and they are unacceptable. If we are to begin to address racial disparities in Maine, we must first be willing to confront the failures in our data collection system. Achieving equity requires intentional action informed by accurate data, research, and analysis. Without comprehensive data, policymakers cannot determine whether disparities exist or understand the scope of the problem or identify which communities are impacted. It is of utmost importance to the Permanent Commission to acknowledge that data has often been used to further disadvantage communities of color. We are hopeful this will be taken into consideration as the program is developed. Without this and without a process that promotes transparency and privacy in data broadly, we believe true equity will not be reached. The Permanent Commission is grateful for the charge presented in this legislation that ranges from advising the state's chief information officer in process development to submitting a joint report that ensures racial and other demographic data is properly addressed in said process. We are excited to embark on this much needed journey toward promoting better outcomes across communities, populations, and experiences. Thank you for your time and consideration of this bill. We respectfully urge you to support LD 1610. I'm happy to answer any questions or provide additional information if desired.
Thank you, Ms. Pottle Urquhart. Are there any questions this morning for Morgan? Sorry, Morgan. Seeing none, thank you for being with us this morning, ma'am, and we appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
Next, we have Nicole Clegg. If you could introduce yourself, please, and present your testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, and good morning. Senator Baldacci, Representative Matlack, and members of the Joint Standing Committee on State and Local Government. My name is Nicole Clegg, and I serve as the Senior Vice President of Public Affairs at Planned Parenthood of Northern New England, and I'm here to submit testimony in support of LD 1610. Planned Parenthood of Northern New England provides comprehensive sexual and reproductive health care to more than 14,000 people in Maine at 4 health centers located in Biddeford, Portland, Sanford, and Topsom. People turn to us for affordable, high-quality care, including wellness exams, birth control, disease testing and treatment, cancer screenings, abortion care, as well as a variety of primary care services. We see everyone who comes to us, regardless of their ability to pay, And in a typical year, we provide more than $4 million in free and discounted care to our communities in Maine. As a mission-driven healthcare provider, we fundamentally believe everybody should be able to get affordable, high-quality sexual and reproductive healthcare in their communities, no matter where they live or how much money they make. And we advocate for policies that help make that vision a reality. At PPNNE, we have a deep understanding of how accurate data analysis undergirds policy development and implementation and can impact the lives of our patients as well as the care we deliver. We have witnessed firsthand how policies can disproportionately impact communities of color, leading to starkly different health outcomes, whether it's how state agencies respond to the COVID-19 pandemic, policies to address maternal and infant health, or efforts to reduce rates of cancer. An in-depth analysis of the outcomes for people of color is necessary to prevent a recurrence of historical inequities in the future. Last session, we testified in support of LD2, which was passed and signed into law by the governor, establishing the requirement of racial impact statements for legislation under consideration by the legislature to address historical and current racial inequity and mitigate such inequities' impact on future policymaking. LD 1610 is a crucial follow-up in the process of addressing Maine's racial inequities, strengthening the state's capacity to collect, analyze, and publish data for policymaking. Racial disparities result from a complex set of factors, including socioeconomic disadvantages, resource allocation, and biased decision-making. Because of this complexity, combating such disparities requires intentional action followed by accurate data, research, and analysis. LD 1610 is a laudable first step, setting up standards for how data is collected, stored, and accessed by establishing a state data governance program. The legislation describes the principles that must guide this program, including commitments to transparency and privacy. It also directs the Maine's Permanent Commission on the status of racial, indigenous, and tribal populations be consulted in the development of the program to ensure racial and other demographic data for policymaking is properly addressed. The overall impact of 1610 extends beyond addressing racial inequity. The state of Maine does not currently have enough demographic analysis to meet the demands of modern governing. Furthermore, what demographic data is gathered tends to be siloed within individual government agencies. LD 1610 will improve demographic analysis and data publication, which in turn will allow for greater public engagement in the legislative process, such as the census, redistricting, and other public policy processes that rely on this type of data. As we've seen over the last 2 years, accurate data collection and analysis is a vital component in implementation of good public policy, especially public health, from facilitating the timely and equitable distribution of COVID relief supplies and vaccines to analyzing the impact of the pandemic itself and ensuring no Mainers are left behind. LD 1610 is a vital step in the process of modernizing and improving Maine's government and ensuring that our policies and actions benefit all our people. I urge you to vote ought to pass on LD 1610, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Excuse me. Thank you, Ms. Clegg. Are there any questions for Ms. Clegg this morning? Seeing none, we appreciate your testimony. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Terrence Miller. Mr. Miller, if you could please introduce yourself and present your testimony.
Good morning, Representative Matlack. Thank you, and members of the Joint Standing Committee on State and Local Government. My name is Terrence Miller, and I'm the Advocacy Director at Preble Street, a nonprofit human service agency with over a dozen programs serving the most vulnerable people across the state of Maine. The mission of Preble Street is to provide accessible, barrier-free services to empower people experiencing problems with homelessness, housing, hunger, and poverty, and to advocate for solutions to these problems. I'm submitting this testimony on behalf of the agency in support of LD 1610. Preble Street supported LD2, which started the critical process of accountability for rectifying racial inequities in Maine's policies. Racism has inflicted irrevocable wounds on racial, ethnic, indigenous, and tribal communities. LD2 helps eliminate structural racism from our lawmaking by assuring laws and policy take into consideration racial disparities. LD 1610 is a key piece of this urgent reform and will improve Maine's ability to collect, centralize, and use data to improve equity across the state's policies. At Preble Street, we see firsthand the impacts of structural inequity and discriminatory policies. A 2020 calculation of people accessing services in 10 Preble Street programs showed that 22% are Black, Indigenous, or people of color, which is more than 3 times the percentage of BIPOC population in the entire state. This data informs the agency that our policies, procedures need to address structural racism and inequities, and models how the critical racial equity data required by LD 1610 will inform policymakers with smarter data and analysis capabilities to support equitable policies and public access. LD 1610 is the first step in a process to create a careful, equitable, and meaningful data collection effort at the statewide level so that we can begin to measure the disparities lived experience has taught us and the pandemic has magnified to undeniable proportions. Data collection, centralization, and usage play an outsized role in helping us measure, compare, and synthesize data to address racial disparities by improving transparent analysis that can be used to end racial inequities in our policies. Please vote to pass LD 1610. Thank you, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Do we have any questions for Mr. Miller this morning? Seeing none, we appreciate you bringing us this testimony today, sir. Next, we have Will Hayward. Mr. Hayward, if you could introduce yourself and present your testimony.
Good morning, Representative Matlack and members of the Joint Standing Committee on State and Local Government. My name is Will Hayward. I'm here today as the Advocacy Program Coordinator for the League of Women Voters of Maine. I'm testifying in support on LD 1610. The League believes that LD 1610 is a critical step towards improving demographic analysis and data sharing in Maine government, and that builds on the promise of LD2. As ardent followers and champions of the evidence-based public policy process, we have long observed the challenge captured by the statement, "No data, no problem." LD 1610 provides structures to make more of the data available so we can begin to identify the problems and develop public policy solutions to address them. LD 1610 has several important measures that many of those testifying today have spoken to. The League is particularly encouraged by this bill's push to add additional demographic analysis capacity to state government. Capacity to both conduct demographic analysis and publish demographic data has long been lacking in state government. This bill helps address that. As an office that uses and shares data across state government, the state's economist's office is particularly well positioned to benefit from this capacity. 2 areas the League has worked in that this capacity could support are the census and redistricting. The 2020 census provides the basis for much of the data that will guide policy and funding decisions over the next decade. And like the rest of the country, Maine faced significant challenges in public information and outreach during this process, particularly for historically marginalized groups. Adding additional capacity now with a charge to focus on demographics and public communications could be a significant step to lay the groundwork for a strong 2030 census. It would also support the many data collection programs that will happen in the intervening years. A related area this capacity could support is redistricting. In the 2021 redistricting process, the League observed that a very minimal portion of the Apportionment Commission's resources were devoted to public information. This, combined with the shortened timeline, made it nearly impossible for the public to have its voice heard in the process. Demographic analysis and communications capacity in state government will provide an important resource for future commissions to draw on to improve public engagement in redistricting. Citizen and community participation in redistricting is a vital principle, and we hope this capacity will be a step towards improving it in the future. There are so many other areas of public policy this bill will improve, and we are excited to see all the ways that improved data can help shape equitable policy. We appreciate the many thoughtful conversations and perspectives that have gone into this bill, and we hope it will earn your support. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'd be happy to answer any questions from the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Hayward. Are there any questions for Mr. Hayward this morning? Seeing none, we appreciate you being here with us today, sir.
Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Amy Gallant.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Amy Gallant. This is Diana. This is Audrey. These are lots of balloons. Please excuse or enjoy. Senator Baldacci, Representative Matlack, and members of the Committee on State and Local Government. My name is Amy Gallant. I'm the Vice President of Public Policy and Research for Good Shepherd Food Bank of Maine. We are here to testify in support of 1610. By collecting, analyzing, and sharing data among state agencies and departments, our ability to measure the impact of community interventions and identify gaps will greatly improve. The food bank works closely with state and other organizations in our collective mission to end hunger in Maine. And one of our top conversations is about eliminating government silos to better serve those living in poverty, to better inform policy solutions. A very concrete example of that is the pandemic EBT program that came in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. If you're not familiar with this program, I love it. I love the pandemic EBT program. What it does is it allows students who would otherwise be qualified for free and reduced meals at school to receive the value of that school meal on their EBT card when they're not in school. It's a terrific program. However, we're talking about government silos. Free and reduced meal data is held within DOE. SNAP eligibility is held within HHS. Those two have done a tremendous job working together, but this data would be much more easily collaboratively shared and built upon. And I can name, a half a dozen other examples just within the COVID pandemic and the government responses, both at state and federal level, that did require some scrambling because there's not this level of intentional collaborative data sharing. I also wanted to share with you that Good Shepherd Food Bank, we're about 5 or 6 years into our own research and data collection. And right now we are at a moment where we're deeply investing more in that work. Feeding America is also launching a new priority around data collection and is launching a free data collection tool for food banks across the country. And I share these 2 points to demonstrate that your committee's consideration of this bill is very timely, and it absolutely follows the state and national trends to really ensure that the data that we're collecting is measuring the interventions that we're all trying to implement through policy to end poverty and many, many other things here in Maine. Happy to answer any questions. Don't know where the children went, but there's one. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Gallant. Do we have any questions for Ms. Gallant this morning? Seeing none, thank you for sharing your children with us
Happy
today.
Valentine's Day, everyone.
All right, next we have Jeff McCabe. Mr. McCabe, welcome back to State and Local Government. If you could introduce yourself again and present your testimony.
Absolutely. Thank you, Representative Matlack, members of the Committee on State and Local Government. My name is Jeff McCabe. I serve as the Director of Legislation and Politics for the Maine Service Employees Association, Local 1989. We are a union of workers here in Maine, and those folks are 13,000 strong. These are workers, including folks that work in all 3 branches of Maine state government. We are here today in strong support of LD 1610. There's been some great testimony already today. There's been some great questions by the committee. We appreciate DAFs coming forward with some recommendations. And we're here today to say, in order to make and establish policies for addressing the needs of Maine's population, it's so essential that the great state of Maine have the most up-to-date and accurate information about Maine's population and how it has changed and how it is changing over time. It's important that the state has accurate information so that it can assess the services provided to the Maine people and make adjustments as needed to meet their needs. This includes the services that our members proudly provide statewide in our communities. Right now, however, you've heard about the issues that exist in data collection. The state doesn't have enough data to meet the needs and demands of modern governing. Staff of 2 people at the state economist's office is not enough. Adding state demographic analyst position to the state economics office would, as proposed in 1610, is necessary in identifying and understand Maine's population as it changes. We're here in strong support, and we'd like to highlight the discussion that happened earlier in regards to transparency as well as privacy, and just echo the importance of that. I've seen the challenges of data sharing when I was serving in the legislature as a member of the ACF committee. This is not a new problem. This issue of siloing is not a new problem, but it's something that this committee can work to address. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and also happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you, sir. Does anyone have a question for Mr. McCabe? Seeing none, thank you, sir, for being with us this morning.
Thank you for your time.
Yes. I understand we have another person in the waiting room to speak in support of this, Mr. Mayall.
Yeah, he just came through. Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Hi, good morning. Yes, thank you. Sorry, I was stuck in the Zoom wormhole for a minute there. Yeah, good morning, Senator Baldacci, Representative Matlack, members of the committee. My name is James Mayall. I'm an economic policy analyst at the Maine Policy, here today to testify in support of LD 1610. MECEP supports LD 1610 because having access to reliable data is critical to being able to analyze, evaluate, and improve state policy. Having access to high quality administrative data is important to any policy analysis, but it's especially so for a state like Maine that has a small population. Our small population means that it's often insufficient to rely on national data collected by federal agencies like the Census Bureau. I'll demonstrate this with an example. According to the Census Bureau's American Community Survey, an average of 70,000 or just over 70,000 Maine families were receiving the SNAP program food stamps in 2019. But according to the state's own administrative data, the actual average enrollment was more like 89,000 households. You can imagine that if a basic statistic like total enrollment can be off by such a significant amount, how difficult it can be to get accurate information on enrollment within subgroups like children, veterans, or people of color if we had to rely simply on the Census Bureau survey data. Using Census Bureau and other data derived from national surveys is especially problematic when it comes to Maine's communities of color. This is partly because as communities of color are small subgroups within Maine, the margin of error within the surveys is especially large. But we also run into the problem that low income and marginalized groups are less likely to respond to surveys and can be harder to reach, which makes them more likely to be undercounted. And I'll give you another example to show you how extreme this undercounting can be. Again, according to the Census Bureau, if we look at the number of children attending K through 12 school in Maine, this accounts for just over 4,500 Black children attending K through 12 school in Maine in 2020. But when we look at the Department of Education's administrative data, the actual number is almost 7,300. That's 60% more children than were counted by the Census Bureau. And we can see that other children of color are also severely miscounted in the census data. Asian and Pacific Islander students were undercounted by an even larger amount than Black students, while Indigenous, Latino, and multiracial students were all overcounted in the census data. You can see that this would make it extremely hard to track outcomes for students of color in our schools if we only had that federal data to rely on. Fortunately, in the examples I gave you, we do have state administrative data to give us an accurate picture of how the laws and policies passed here in Augusta affect people's lives. But there are still too many instances in which we don't have the data to see the whole picture. Sometimes this is because the right questions aren't being asked. Sometimes it's because state agencies aren't able to share data with each other easily. And sometimes it's simply because the data isn't publicly available and researchers might not even know what to ask for in a freedom of access request. LD 1610 will help to address these issues by having uniform data collection and sharing policies to make this data more uniform and more widely available. If we want to make evidence-based policy, and particularly if we want to make policy which closes the racial disparities, which are still too common in our state, we need to have access to accurate data. Last year, this committee took a significant step in passing LD2, which made Maine the first state to adopt a process to allow all legislative committees to request racial impact statements. That has a huge potential to improve the information legislators have at their disposal while crafting policy. But those racial impact statements are only going to be as good as the data to which they have access. And passing LD 1610 will help to ensure that you have the best information before you as legislators to write laws in the future. I urge you to vote to pass on LD 1610. Thank you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mile. Do we have any questions this morning for him? Seeing no questions, we appreciate you joining us here this morning, sir. Next, we have Senator Dave Miramont with us. Senator Miramont, if you could introduce yourself and present your testimony.
Good morning. I'm here for the cemetery bill, which
Oh, cemetery bill. I'm sorry.
it didn't allow me to register in any other way except to say this. I figured I'd get here and tell you this. So thank you.
Okay. You're here for the cemetery bill, but 1610? Are you testifying on 1610?
I am not. Nothing to do with 1610.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Then we'll be
you.
with you in a few.
Yes.
We have, I believe, is our final person here to testify is Karen Lee Harrington. Ms. Harrington, if you could identify yourself.
Hi, good morning, Representative Matlock and Senator Baldacci. My name is Karen Lee Harrington, and I am the Executive Director of the Maine Health Data Organization. And I'd like to just apologize for not showing my video. My internet is unstable. So I either can show you my face or my voice. So I'll go with the voice. And I'll just be very quick to say that I think that this is really important work that Representative Talbot Ross is putting forward, especially for parts of state government where there are not standards around data governance. But I want to point out that for my organization, which again is the Maine Health Data Organization, and for those of you that are not familiar with what we do, we were created by the legislature back in 1995. We're an independent executive agency. I serve the pleasure of a board of trustees or board of directors, excuse me, that is multi-stakeholder. And our sole purpose is to create and maintain a useful, objective, reliable, and comprehensive health information database. We are to use that to report out on healthcare costs and quality, promote transparency. We have all kinds of statutes that require us to publicly report data. And then we are required to make that data available to the broadest extent possible. We have over 1 billion healthcare records. All we do is collect data and release data and report on data. We have a data governance structure that is governed by our statute, which is Title 22, Chapter 1683, and 13 agency rules that set out uniform structures for collecting data from all of Maine's hospitals, the payers in the state. I mean, we collect all kinds of data. And this would not be something that MHDO would necessarily be interested in having to change all of our structure for something that I think is more about agencies where that doesn't exist. Our sole purpose is data collection. And part of that data collection process is that we have data governance in place. And if we were to disrupt that, the people that use our data are the hospitals in the state. They use it for planning purposes. They use it to help them understand what their communities need in terms of access, costs. And I could go on, and I know you're crazy busy. I just wanted to make myself available for the work session because we clearly want to help support, and to the extent that we can share any of our best practice. I mean, it has been years of developing this type of structure. We're happy to do that, but I think that we would want to suggest to the sponsor that we specifically be excluded from this process, as we don't want any unintended consequences with the work that we're doing and we've been invested in for all these years. And that I think our data users would say, you know, our data is more available and more comprehensive than any other data set that's available in the state. And it's being used to help inform policy at your levels, as well as to help inform work that others are doing outside of state government. And I could go on, so I'm going to stop and would be happy to answer any questions, and obviously will be available at the work session. And I would love to talk about perhaps some specific language in the bill if the sponsor is open to that. That doesn't, again, create any unintended consequences for work that the Maine Health Data Organization is doing.
Thank you, Ms. Harrington. Do we have any questions for Ms. Harrington this morning? Representative Copeland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Harrington, for coming and speaking with us. I'll admit that I'm not familiar with your organization. I'm looking at the website now and I see lots of data there. I don't see why you would need to be excluded. I'm curious why that would need to be. I mean, I'm thinking that, you know, cooperation or whatever. I don't think there's any demands on you for any extra work or anything. I'm curious about that. Would you elaborate?
Yes, absolutely. And I 100% we would collaborate and help support because of what we've been doing since our existence in terms of building out this type of infrastructure. It's not easy. But what I worry about is turning upside down what it is that we're doing for the purposes of creating a standardized structure in parts of state government where it doesn't exist. Our model, that's all we do is data collection. And it's been developed in collaboration with a multi-stakeholder board. And I can't envision how that would all change for trying to establish those same sorts of standards within parts of state government where that does not exist. I mean, I think it makes total sense where there aren't those kind of structures and there is data collection. We have those structures in place now. And I worry about how this might upset all of that. And what is most important to us is that our data continues to be available to the extent that it is now to all of those that are eligible to receive the data. I mean, you have to have the right infrastructure to take in our data because it is, it is sensitive data. It just, and again, I'm more than happy to have more detailed conversations with the sponsor and with DAFs about how we can work together on this, because we absolutely want to help support. And anybody that knows the work that we've done, I think they would say we are very collaborative. I just am worried about, again, unintended consequences.
Thank you, Ms. Harrington. I think this is a conversation that you can have with the sponsor and with others between now and the work session. And we look forward to talking further about this at the work session. Thank you. Are there any further questions for Ms. Harrington? Ms. Harrington, thank you for being here with us, and we look forward to seeing you at the work session. Cheryl, do we have anybody else that would like to speak on this bill today?
There is no one else.
Thank you very much. Seeing that there are no other speakers here today, if you have further information or questions that you would like Lynn to include in our work session right now, or you could get in touch with her between now and then, I'd appreciate it. Representative Talbot Ross, thank you so very much for bringing this bill to our attention, and we look forward to the work session.
Thank you all very much. I just want to give extra thanks to Lynn for her work on the various amendments, particularly over the weekend. Thank you so very much, Lynn, for all of your help. And I appreciate the committee's time this morning. Thank you.
You're most welcome. Thank you. If there's no other questions or comments, we will close this public hearing on LD 1610, and we will move along to Cheryl, 379.
That's the next on the list, if that's what Lynn would like.
That is what's up, Madam.
Well, yes. Is this our work session?
This is the work session, yes. And there are two bills that are scheduled for the work session this morning. The first one is LD 379. And as you've heard, Senator Miramont, who's the sponsor for that bill, is in the waiting area. And you may recall, so let me just give an update, or not an update, a brief reminder. So this was public, you had the public hearing for this about a year ago in March, and then you had some work sessions. During the work sessions, the committee expressed support for the creation of a permanent commission. And there were detailed amendments that I drafted up. The issue that was not resolved during the prior session, and the reason this bill was carried over, was to allow Representative Greenwood offered to, and with the sponsor and with interested parties, offered to try and find a state agency that desired or was appropriate to house, to oversee the permanent commission. And Representative Greenwood and some of the interested parties did have conversations, I believe, with the Secretary of State's office. I was with Representative Greenwood when he had a conversation with the Maine Historical Preservation Commission, that was just recently, to discuss if that agency was an appropriate home for this permanent commission. And so I believe the work session this morning, I don't have a bill analysis because we did that way back in March of last year. I think the discussion this morning is to hear back from Representative Greenwood on what he has learned and if he had any suggestions for a permanent home, and then for the committee to discuss any next steps or votes on the bill.
All right, Representative Greenwood.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I definitely want to thank Lynn for organizing that meeting that we had with the Historic Preservation Commission. We met with Dr. Baker, Christy Chapman Mitchell, and Kurt Mahoney from the Historic Preservation Commission. They agreed in concept that this is a definite necessity. I think that was agreed upon. However, they didn't think that it was a good fit within their organization because of the work they do. So we were unsuccessful in finding a home. I wish I had something better to report, but I guess what I would say from this point was I truly support this bill. I truly support the creation of the commission, and it may be a situation where we are on similar to another bill where nobody wants it, but maybe we have to assign it. And I guess that was my thought, but I will wait for any other comments from Senator Miramont, who's here with us today. And I'd also like to ask if Helen Shaw is in the waiting room, if she could be brought forward.
Yes, sir. Cheryl, first of all, Lynn, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I forgot a critical element, which is that this committee had tabled the bill. So you would want to make a motion to remove from the table before you continue discussing. And I apologize for not mentioning that right off the bat.
Thank you. Representative Greenwood?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you very much. All those in favor of taking this bill off the table? Thank you very much. Yes, if you could bring over Ms. Shaw, if you could bring over the state archivist. Let me see. I thought I saw somebody else over there who had an interest in this discussion. Let me see. I'm not sure, but I know at least those two folks will be here. And Senator Miramont, are you here to, do you have anything that you'd like to add at this point, or are you here for the discussion?
I'm just here for the discussion. The Representative Greenwood has taken the lead, and Ms. Shaw has been just really active on this. They have a great understanding of it, far more than me. So I'll just be quiet and sit in the background. Thank you.
Not a worry at all. Thank you, and welcome, Ms. Shaw and Ms. McBrien. We appreciate you being here. Senator Baldacci, you're back. Did you want to, we're just beginning this work session on this, on the bill regarding cemeteries. Probably we need a bit of a refresher here, seeing as it's been a while since we've talked as a committee about this bill. So perhaps Lynn Caswell, if you could give us a quick précis of what's taken place and where we stand right now.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So as I said last year, this bill proposed a cemetery commission that would be created in statute. No expenses were authorized for this commission. The commission, you added the word preservation because that truly is the focus of this permanent commission. So it would be called the Maine State Cemetery Preservation Commission. It had 11 members, and this is how you discussed it to amend it. So not the original bill, but what the committee during the work sessions agreed to. There would be members from the Statewide Association of Preserving Neglected Cemeteries. Cemetery directors and supervisors would be represented. An association of municipalities such as MMA, town clerks would be represented, funeral directors would be represented, realtors would be represented, a statewide historical society would be represented, and members of the federally recognized Indian Nation tribe or band would be members. And the open position that was not filled was the state agency representative. The duties of the commission were advice and education primarily to municipalities and to property owners who have these ancient burying grounds on their property. So to advise them on what laws are applicable, best practices for preserving the ancient burying memorials, and to review statutes that may come to the legislature that apply or relate to burying grounds and cemeteries, and to provide information to committees on those bills of legislation. The bill also was going to allow for remote participation if the commission did decide to meet in that manner, and it also left blank the issue of what staff, who would staff this commission, what state agency. So that's the broad brush of what the bill, as the committee discussed, would do and who is a member. And again, the outstanding question for the committee was what agency would be a participant in the commission and also have responsibilities to staff the commission.
Thank you very much. So we are where we were last spring in many respects. We have a commission that we have put a structure to, membership and so forth. What we are lacking at this point in time is a home for this commission, a place where they can get the support they need to do the work, and we have not been successful in finding that one. As Representative Greenwood mentions, we can put into the legislation where we want it to be assigned and state that it could be within existing funding. But I believe we need to discuss this further to see if we do have a place that we might be interested in asking again. I know that Ms. McBrien is here because we have discussed in the past the Secretary of State's office, and the state archivist might be the area where something like this could be housed, but it would probably require staffing beyond what they have right now, so there would be a fiscal note attached to it. Are there any discussion amongst the committee members? Do we have anything further? Representative Toole.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to hear from the state archivist as to hosting it there and what their what their staffing, what they see their staffing commitment would be based on what Lynn has outlined, whether if it's several meetings a year, or if it's a part-time employee, or what the case may be, and whether or not they have any other issues or concerns. And I know Representative Greenwood had asked for Helen Shaw to participate, so if we could get her feedback on that after the Secretary of State votes.
Thank you. Ms. McBrien, welcome back to State and Local Government. If you could identify yourself, and then if you could respond to Representative Toole about how this commission might fit within your organization and what the fiscal note might be.
Certainly. Thank you so much for having me here, Representative Matlack, and members of the Joint Standing Committee on State and Local Government. Representative Toole, thank you for your question. I have been, since our conversations last spring, I've been thinking about this commission. And while just like the Maine Historic Preservation Commission, I agree there seems to be a great need for support of cemeteries across the state. The problem for the state archives, just like with Maine Historic Preservation Commission, is it doesn't fit directly within our realm of responsibility. So much of this work is about advising when it comes to land use and access and preservation of stones or preservations of tombs or fences. The archives really deals with records. So I think that's one of my main concerns. If it was to come to us, because it is so much outside the realm of what we already do, and we already don't have enough staff to do everything that we need to do, it would definitely need some additional staff to support this work, not only to coordinate the meetings, but also to answer questions, help answer questions from the public, from municipalities. I would completely envision that municipalities, private corporations that own cemeteries would ask someone to come visit, see a space. So there's going to be some travel involved. I would envision there would be at least one director of the commission, at least one full-time staff person to do a lot of that. But again, my other thought too is if it's assigned to the archives, because we are a records-based institution and we already have lots of genealogists contacting us, if we also get a cemetery commission, there's going to be an expectation of cemetery records and more genealogy information around cemetery information. It's just a natural thought process for researchers. As that, I would really need to have a genealogy archivist assigned to the department as well to help those members of the public find that information that they're searching for.
Thank you, Ms. McBrien. Representative Toole, does that answer your question?
I think it does, but I know it's dangerous to put a dollar figure on that, but have you given any thought to just such a thing, generally speaking?
I haven't, to be perfectly honest. I would need to talk with my budget office because I know when you do add staff people, it's not only salaries that are associated, but benefits, office equipment, all of that. So I would need to talk with our budget office first, but I can certainly gather that information for you.
Gotcha, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. McBrien. Ms. Shaw, welcome back to State and Local Government. You are basically our expert about cemeteries here in the state of Maine. Do you have any thoughts on where this legislation has progressed? Any thoughts on where we might find a home for it within the state?
Yeah. First off, Ms. McBrien mentioned records. Right now, the Maine Old Cemetery Association's bicentennial inscription programs records are at the Fogler Library at University of Maine. So there are records that exist for the old cemeteries. I must confess that I was initially against putting it or approaching the Maine Historic Commission because my experience with that group in the past had not been in favor of cemeteries. They do oversee two cemeteries that are on the state historic registry, one of which is here in Rockland. And so when it became obvious that there was nobody else to ask, we'd been through several different companies, I was surprised to find out that they said we don't fit. But then again, that goes back to my previous experience where they don't seem to look at anything besides buildings and native population sites. I can't think of anything else. I'm sorry. We've worked so hard on this, and everybody says we need it, but nobody's willing to take up the banner and run with it. I could see this coming into existence without funding, to give us an opportunity to get organized, to get the groups of people, the representatives, members of the committee together, and only needing maybe somebody to set up a Zoom meetings for us for a year or so we can get our feet together, figure out exactly what we do need in terms of funding, and then ask for financial help and a staff member next year after. Hugh Lemaster, who's also been working with me on this, seems to think we can do everything on our own without a staff person. But in talking to Ms. McBrien and to Secretary Bellows, I understand that really isn't the case. We do need a staff person somewhere to at least call up and say, we need a Zoom meeting, or somebody to receive phone calls from the towns, from the committees and so on, asking for help. Then that person would refer them to us. So that's my thoughts for now.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw. Representative Toole.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ms. Shaw. So listening to you speak, the first year would be organizational, getting the commission organized, bylaws, minutes, basic things that could potentially fall within existing resources. Giving towns advice and doing site visits and things like that, would that be something that you would wait until you have made an appeal for additional funding in next year? And I ask that because within the bill, there is the opportunity, or I think the intent was that we have the opportunity for the commission to report out legislation going forward. So I'm wondering if the first year could be just organizational, get you folks up and going, meeting, talking, clerical type of things, and then a more firm budget be prepared for next year. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes, and I remembered now, the Maine Old Cemetery Association does have a small amount of money available to do printouts of laws and things like that to send to towns and so on. I don't think it's very much, but
so thank you. But so with that, could we, and this is a question for Lynn, could we put it in the commission that the commission could accept grants and gifts and outside revenue sources to cover things like you just mentioned? Say the Maine Old Cemeteries wants to help provide funding to do some work towards the commission's mission. Would that be something we could do? Or would that be something that would be amenable to all of the stakeholders?
Thank you, Representative Toole. I will answer the first part of your question. I do know that there have been commissions that are legislative studies that are allowed to accept private funds. I would have to do research on if a permanent commission, I'm fairly certain there probably is there somewhere in statute, but I need to research some of the details on that to find out what parameters need to go around it and if there is likely to be state resources needed to administer that. And I'm also just going to throw out an idea. If you're going down this path, there is the option of a resolve. Oftentimes you can have a resolve that's a bit limited in scope and time, a resolve to allow a group to work, come back to the report back to the committee, give the committee the ability to report out legislation. That avoids putting something in statute, which is a positive and a negative, right? So I'm just throwing out the thought of a resolve as a possible avenue.
Thank you very much. And I guess I would be curious as to what the resolve would look like based on where we're going with things. Would this, so the commission would meet formally, how would that work? I guess is how I'm going to ask it.
So I see the resolve, I mean, resolves and statutes, resolves and bills are the same, except that resolves generally do not codify language into a statute. So the resolve could be very similar to the bill in that it sets up this permanent commission without resources, with the same members, instructing this commission to meet, let's say, X number of times within the next year, report back to the legislature, to this committee, and this committee could then, if it so chose, report out the bill, something similar to what you have in LD 379. It's a bit of kicking the can down the road. There is that element to that because you're not creating the statute now. And I will I haven't really thought through the pros and cons. So that's about all I think I can share right now on that.
Well, thank you very much for that. I guess I would be interested in seeing what, I know Representative Greenwood has done a lot of work on this, and I'd be interested in getting his thoughts on where we go from here with what's been laid out.
Okay, I'll get to you in just a second. Ms. Shaw, Mr. Green, Representative Greenwood, Senator Baldacci, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. One of the things I noticed, have we talked to the Bureau of Veterans Services? There's a special we talked to them.
Yeah.
Okay, because there's a special program for Maine Veterans Memorial Cemetery System and a superintendent that's been appointed. I mean, under the statute, they have interaction with all of the cemeteries in the state of Maine. That they're charged with erecting a monument in the center of each cemetery in the state. And among other requirements, I'm surprised that they're not willing to host this.
Ms. Shaw, would you care to comment?
The way the original bill was written made them in charge. And they came to the public hearing and said, absolutely not. The other thing, and Representative Toole mentioned, Lynn mentioned a resolve. I'm wondering if that was the way the committee was formed, 2015, 16. This committee and the Veterans Affairs Committee formed a commission under the fellow who was then in charge of the cemetery, Veterans Affairs General. Anyway, and we looked at all the cemeteries, and the end result of that was to form a commission, a recommendation to form a commission to look into how veterans graves, focused on veterans graves, but that was done, I think that was done by a resolve.
Thank you. Representative Greenwood.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't really have a preference. I would obviously like to see this be put in statute, but if we're not getting some sort of consensus that that's the best way to do it. I reluctantly would support a resolve to get the work started, because this is more of an education and information committee. And I just think that they have so much work to do, that, we kicking the can down the road is only going to just that, kick it down the road. If that's the direction the committee is looking to go, I'm okay with that. But I would prefer to just assign it to somebody, and just say, this is now part of your duties. We have to be the leaders in the group and just say this, it's definitely necessary. And as much as I hate to assign it without the willfulness of acceptance, it may be the route to take.
Thank you. Ms. McBrien?
Thank you so much. I was just going to add that even as a resolve, you're going to still ask for staff time, staff commitment from an agency that will need to be considered. And if you're looking for any grant funding to help get something started or some activities started, I believe that usually would have to run through one of the agencies to be coordinated within the budget office. So that also adds some staff time, some resources, state resources to be writing a grant, managing the grant, that kind of thing. So just some things to keep in mind as we're talking about funding.
Thank you. Ms. Copeland, Representative Copeland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know that it's been discussed, and I just wanted to hear it again, why the Maine Historic Preservation Commission wouldn't be the home for this. It seems logical to me. Just because it doesn't have a cemetery considerations, I don't know why it can't. And speaking to what Representative Greenwood was saying, maybe it could.
The Historic Preservation, is that a quasi-governmental agency, Lynn, or is that a agency outside of the state?
It's in the state.
Pardon me?
It's in the state of Maine website.
Okay. Lynn Caswell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So it is considered a state agency, and Representative Greenwood can correct me if my recollection is wrong. I think that the Historical Preservation Commission made very similar comments to what the state archivist just made, and that is that the public will look to it for a level of participation and expertise. They mentioned the same thing about requests to come and needing to travel, needing to develop an expertise within the commission regarding ancient cemeteries. So it was very similar. They think it's a very important issue. They would just need resources added to the commission to be able to provide the level of expertise that the public would expect from them if they were the home.
Right. Thank you. Were we to say to whomever, whichever agency we chose to assign this task to, and say and tell them to do it within existing resources, that would still entail a fiscal note from either agency that would add a staff person, or is within existing resources just that?
My understanding, Madam Chair, is that within existing resources, there is no fiscal note. However, that does allow the agency to limit the amount of assistance that they provide to the commission.
Right. Representative Toole?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, and that's my impression as well. But I think if Secretary of State, State Archivist is willing to have somebody organize a meeting, Zoom meeting or what have you, provide the basics of getting people together and having the commission start its work in terms of bylaws, in terms of determining its scope of work, and not doing things like advising municipalities right off the bat. I think if there's that expectation, I wouldn't have a problem with going within existing resources. And then next year, the commission / Secretary of State come back with a plan to say, the law says we need to do all of this other stuff, and let's put a budget together and really drill down what it's going to cost and make the case to appropriations. And that's how I view that. So, I mean, if Secretary of State's folks are okay with doing the bare basic meeting management, getting the commission up and running and folks talking, doing the very basic stuff of technical expertise that way with no other expectation, I think that could be a way forward for us.
Thank you, sir. Representative Copeland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I understand that the archivist is about records. So I don't know that they would ever be the appropriate place to ask for, or discuss policies on what goes where and what, how things go. So I would propose that it went to the Maine Historic Preservation Commission, and that is in the office of the State Historic, okay, it's in the state of Maine, it says right here. Anyway, why don't we just limit what we will provide? So, right on the website or the web page or whatever, in whatever literature or communications that there are, just at the outset say that the state of Maine is just housing this committee on cemeteries and will not be providing additional resources or data or policies, and that information should be obtained as it's available right from the Cemeteries Association.
Thank you. Cheryl, if you could let I believe it's Mr. Mahoney across, that would be greatly appreciated. I believe he's from the Maine Historic Preservation and he'll speak with us on this subject. Ms. Shaw, you have your hand up.
Yeah, yes, excuse me. Precisely as Representative Copeland said, the hosting agency would not be expected to answer all these questions. That's the job of the commission. The commission would be the ones who would receive the questions from the towns, from the real estate agents and so on, and answer them. So all we need is somebody to pass that information on. So-and-so called and has this question, or, make copies of the law available, that sort of thing. I don't see the hosting commission being the source of information and responses to the public. The public should be looking to the Cemetery Commission. And in other states, I didn't bring the stuff downstairs from my office. In other states, cemetery commissions are under the State Historic Commission or committee, whatever they call them in that state.
Thank you. Mr. Mahoney, welcome to State and Local Government. We've been talking about your agency, so perhaps
yes,
you'd like to speak on their behalf.
Thank you, Representative Matlack and members of the committee. And I apologize for the dark viewing. It's somehow the way my screen gets set up in the office. But I appreciate your inviting me to join the work session here. Representative Greenwood and Lynn did meet with us, with our chair, Dr. Emerson Baker, and our assistant director, Christy Chapman Mitchell. We had a good discussion. And I think has been noted already, we had some of the same interests in the goals of this bill, but from the standpoint of administering this program and meeting the expectations of the public, municipalities, and others about the challenges that all of this includes, including legal issues about public access to cemeteries and technical issues of conservation and whatnot. That really is way beyond the scope of our program at the moment. Ms. Shaw mentioned that we, I believe, would oversee cemeteries. That's not really correct. We do nominate on very rare occasions cemeteries to the National Register of Historic Places, but we then have no authority after that. So I just want to make that clarification. And I also want to point out, the National Register of Historic Places is our key program that we run here at the commission. And cemeteries are only eligible for listing in the National Register under very, very narrow circumstances. And those primarily have to do with their design. If they're designed cemeteries, places like the Evergreen Cemetery in Portland, which is a garden cemetery, or Mount Hope Cemetery in Bangor. So there are very few cemeteries listed in the National Register because of the exclusion that typically goes with the National Register program. So that's just a little bit of background. That's why cemeteries aren't a major focus of what we do. So I think, as I mentioned, some of the same things that Ms. McBride raised with you, the state archivist, would be similar to us. So I just wanted to share that, have that opportunity to share that with you. What we did say to Representative Greenwood and to Lynn was, if you really want this program to succeed, you need to find some funding for it, because as Kate mentioned, there's going to be an expectation that there will be technical assistance provided. There will be even answering the phone calls and directing people to other sources. The state agency in which you put this will be assumed to be the place where that expertise resides, and where that administrative function is going to rest, be it preparing reports, doing research, et cetera. And I think that, if this is important enough for the legislature to enact some legislation, I think that some funding should go with it. And that funding should even, again, this is something we talked to Representative Greenwood and Lynn with, might even include a small grants program for municipalities to, clear cemeteries or things, because, a lot of the burden, as you well know, falls on municipals, cemeteries and municipalities to take care of these cemeteries. And, they don't have the funding at the moment. And a small grant program might encourage them to take care of them, or to help with establishing, access over property. So there's lots to think about in this, and I think it really merits finding some funding to go with it.
Thank you, sir. Ms. McBride.
Thank you so much. I just want to echo a lot of what Mr. Moni spoke to, but also I think, just because I'm an historian and I'm trained to think very long term, my initial thought is, well, there will be lots of intention immediately that the commission will be able to answer all the questions, do all of the work. I've seen it happen with too many commissions before, that within a couple of years that very quickly fades away, because there is an agency assigned and there's staff there every day. So there's an expectation that the agency will pick up a lot of that work. So if we're talking about putting in something in statute, I would urge the committee to think through that long-term expectation and need. And just to make sure that if we're setting something up, we're setting it up correctly for success right from the beginning.
So you're not necessarily recommending the resolve direction where we ask that the group, as specifically set out in the resolve, would take on the task of developing a program and come back in about a year? Do you think that there would still be oversight needed or something along those lines in order to have that group function properly?
My opinion is that if within the resolve, the commission is assigned to an agency as well to do that work, then a lot of that work will end up falling on an agency. The commission will figure out the policy and where they want to go, but the coordination, the answering questions, the posting, public posting of this material, taking minutes, that will inevitably fall on the agency. So there will still be that demand and expectation.
Thank you. Well, I guess we're back where we started from. Representative Toole.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I guess what I would say, and I don't disagree with anything that either said there. I think it is inevitable that once you have a commission, that the policy does get hashed out at the commission level, but then a lot of work does fall back on the staff to do the work. I mean, that's just how it goes. But what I guess what I would say is if we do move forward, either direction, historical preservation or the archivist, if we do, then I think this first year just has to be getting the commission up and running. Because right now we have nothing. And the public expectation for the first year should be very little until the commission gets their feet under them, reports back to this committee, and fleshes out the scope of work in greater depth. And ultimately, it will come back to the legislature to where money is spent and appropriated. I do agree that probably money is going to have to be spent if you're going to be doing site visits and things like that, or the commission is going to be doing them, whichever the case may be. So, but I just think to get things running off of the ground, to get the commission off the ground, then I think that is something that could potentially be done in existing resources, and it will be up to the state agency to say this is all we can do within resources, and if we're going to do more, then we'll have to get this up and running and put a plan together for next year. I do think it should be in statute, but I don't have a preference who gets it. I know there seems to be some appetite for historical preservation. If Representative Copeland feels that, and others feel that's the way to go, I would go along with it. But I don't think we should abandon this either, because we've come too far with it.
Thank you. Senator Baldacci.
Thank you. My preference, and I agree with Representative Greenwood that we need to just assign this or direction. But I honestly think we need to take this over to the Maine Bureau of Veterans under their system. They have an existing statewide memorial cemetery system that deals with all the cemeteries, albeit only veterans, but it deals with all the cemeteries in the state of Maine. And they have money from a cemetery fund. So I think that the best, and this would be less duplicative because they'll be doing site visits, most likely. They'll be doing a lot of cemetery work in connection with their existing work. So And maybe we can pitch it to them that this isn't as all encompassing as maybe the original bill was in terms of their role. But I think it would be less burdensome and less duplicative if we go to the Maine Bureau of Veterans System under their current Veterans Memorial Cemetery system, which was set up by state law. That's my opinion. I just wanted to share that with others. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Representative Greenwood, I see you nodding vigorously.
Yeah, I would actually agree, because that was my preference in the beginning. And then we kind of moved in a different direction. But I got to agree, they have day-to-day interactions with cemeteries. And I think they would be the spot for it. I really do.
Fine. So shall we, are there any other members of the committee who have another opinion about where we should go, or should we follow the recommendation of Senator Baldacci and Representative Greenwood that we ask the veterans group to take on this task within existing resources and ask that they report back to state and local government in a year with recommendations of how to codify this? Ms. Shaw.
I would support that. Again, perhaps their ideas have changed since they first came to the work session or the public hearing and said absolutely not. If you look at the bill, the director of the Bureau of Maine Veterans Services is a member of the commission. So it makes logical sense to persuade them to take it up and do it.
Thank you. Is there any other consideration across the committee? Representative Toole.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I have no problem doing that. And I thank Senator Baldacci, Representative Greenwood for coming up with the place. I think in the end, the worst that could possibly happen would be the chief executive veto it, and we will have to make the case to override it if that turns out to be the case. But as others have said, with the legislature, and this is something, if we truly believe in it as a committee, we're going to have to bite the bullet and do that, you know. So okay. I would support that if that's a motion by either one or both or somebody else.
Lynn, how do we do this? Or you have Lynn Caswell? How do we do this? Or you have
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to offer to summarize where I think you are as far as ideas. It sounds to me like the committee is agreeing to the expanded commission that you set up in the earlier work sessions with the original Maine Veterans Home as the agency, that the within existing resources will remain in the, or excuse me, will be inserted in, and that there will be an obligation on the commission to report back to this committee within a year date. You'll specify a date on the ongoing expenses that would be needed to support this commission, and the committee would have the ability to report out legislation for ongoing funding. And I believe that you are not doing this as a resolve, you are doing this as a bill which would codify the commission into statute. That's my understanding of your discussions at this moment.
Representative Toole, a resolve or codifying within statute?
My impression, and I believe Lynn is right, is that we are doing this in statute. The one point that I think she may have missed is the intention is for the commission to also be able to bring forth legislation to the issue itself with cemeteries, that if once they're up and running, if they identify issues consistent with their mission, that bills would also be able to be reported out. Now, I don't know if that's clear in the motion, but I believe it is in the bill, or one version thereof. So,
also, Lynn, there was mention of this cemetery commission being able to accept grants.
Right.
I want to make sure that they could do something along those lines to augment their funding.
Right.
Yes, Madam Chair. I was actually expecting Representative Toole to mention that as the missing link. So,
You're rubbing off on me, Representative Toole.
but
I
no,
can't steal all the fun.
no. So I'm just going to say it again because I have to draft this and it helps me to reiterate. So I will look into the grant funding and add language that would allow the commission to accept grants, grant funding, Maine Veterans Home. Do you want the report to be an annual report? So the first year reporting back on ongoing funding, but do you want an ongoing obligation to report back to this committee?
I'm thinking that it once per session, maybe. I'm every 2 years in the second session, perhaps. But and that would be as frequent as necessary. I don't think every year is a requirement.
Right.
So I'm seeing some heads nodding over there. So yes. Okay, thank you.
And if I might interject, I mean, if the commission does have the ability to weigh in on legislation, they will be before the committee anyhow. So
right.
Additionally, so I would say that would be fine.
Okay. Okay. You have that for us, Lynn? Do we need to vote on this one? Or are you going to come back to us with language and then we'll vote then?
I would suggest that you vote now. I will draft the amendment, bring it back. And if there's substantive errors, you can vote to reconsider and change. But I would say vote now.
Thank you. Senator Baldacci. I can't hear you, sir. Oh, there you go.
Oh, I'm sorry. I would move the Greenwood Baldacci Cemetery Amendment ought to pass as amended.
Representative Greenwood, are you seconding that?
I'll second that.
Thank you very much. So all in favor, Cheryl, if you could call the roll, but all those in favor of the Baldacci Greenwood Cemetery Commission. Sir, Representative Bryant? Oops, you're on mute, sir. There you go.
I just wondered, I thought that I saw Ms. McBrien had a question. I want to make sure it's out before us before we vote, if this is when discussion for.
Okay, she's shaking her head no that she doesn't have one at this point.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, Cheryl, if there being no further questions with regard to this matter, Cheryl, if you could call the roll, please.
I will. LD 379 ought to pass as amended. Senator Joseph Baldacci.
Yes.
Senator Joseph Baldacci, yes. Senator Kimberly Rosen.
Yes.
Senator Kimberly Rosen, yes. Senator Ned Claxton, absent. Representative Ann Matlack.
Yes.
Representative Ann Matlack, yes. Representative William Toole.
Yes.
Representative William Toole, yes. Representative Mark Bryant.
Yes.
Representative Mark Bryant, yes. Representative Randall Greenwood.
Yes.
Representative Randall Greenwood, yes. Representative Sean Paulus, absent. Representative Francis Head.
Yes.
Representative Francis Head, yes. Representative Walter Reisman.
Yes.
Representative Walter Reisman, yes. Representative Kathy Downs.
Yes.
Representative Kathy Downs, yes. Representative Lynn Copeland.
Yes.
Representative Lynn Copeland, yes. 10 yes, 2 absent.
Thank you all very much. And I appreciate Ms. McBrien and Mr. Moni coming by to visit with us and chat and talk this matter through with us. Thank you very much for being here today. Lynn, next up we have.
Next up we have LD 1795, and you had a motion to table, so you would want a motion to remove from the table.
May I have a motion to remove from the table?
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second, probably just raising hands in favor of taking this matter off the table. Thank you very much. Lynn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. So LD 1795, Representative Bryant was the sponsor. This was a DAF's department bill. Anya Trundy was in the attendee room. She has since disappeared, but she may be coming back. So this bill was updating statutory references in the building code standards applicable to state buildings. And you had a work session on this last week. And during that work session, 2 individuals were asked to be present, and I believe they are in the waiting room. Rebecca Graham from MMA was asked to be present to share with the committee whether Maine Municipal Association had any concerns with this bill. And the Maine, I want to say Principals Association, but that is not its correct title. I believe it's the Maine School Management Association had submitted testimony neither for nor against, expressing potential concern with how this bill would impact, so I believe, school construction. And Ms. Wallach was also asked to be present, and she is here. So they are here to share with the committee whether there were any concerns with the bill as drafted.
Thank you, Lynn. Ms. Wallach, welcome back to State and Local Government. If you could introduce yourself and then give us your perspective on this bill, please.
Yes, thank you. I'm Victoria Wallach. I'm the Communications and Government Relations person for Maine School Management, which includes the Maine School Boards Association and Maine School Superintendents Association. There already is in law passed in 2021 that requires ASHRAE standards to apply to all public schools no earlier than July 1st, 2022, and no later than July 1st, 2026. This bill, we believe, would apply to buildings occupied by state employees. And we have state employees in the unorganized territory. They're actually owned by the state. So our concern is that the UT schools owned by them there's no timeline when they would have to comply, even though it's all public schools. It's just a matter of where they're at. So we would like the UT schools to follow the same rules as the ASHRAE standards for regular public schools, which is no earlier than July 1st, 2022, and no later than July 1st, 2026.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I see that Ms. Trundy has joined us. Ms. Trundy, did you hear what Ms. Wallach was mentioning about MSMA? Do you have any comments on that?
I did. I guess I'm trying to think on my feet here because I'd like for us to get this cleaned up for our purposes. I guess my question would be whether there's that's about 30 employees, is my understanding, based on another bill that has been dealing with the same subject or a related subject. I wonder if there is if Lynn could craft a carve out that would observe the timeline that Victoria has brought up there, but would allow everything else to go forward for other state buildings.
Thank you. Lynn, is that something you might be able to accomplish?
I think so. I would need to look at the statutes, but that was where my thoughts were going when Ms. Wallach was talking. So I would, if the committee moves forward with instructions, I would just ask that I be able to consult with Ms. Wallach and Anya Trundy in drafting that before bringing it back to the committee.
Thank you. It sounds like there would be something that fell through the cracks if it weren't inserted into some legislation, and ours being as good a place as any. I think we should do that so that we don't leave any school buildings out of this and they get left behind somewhere, the schools in the UT. Representative Bryant, you have your hand up, sir. Oops, he may have stepped away.
Nope.
Oh, there you are. Okay, you're on mute right now. You're still on mute, sir. There you are.
Thank you. I'm just wondering for clarity and just to cover the bases, that whoever the union people are representing them just are part of the conversation to make sure we're not blindsiding anybody with a change in this. I don't think it's going to matter, but I think for our own sake, I'd feel better if we included them in that conversation of what we're changing. Whoever deals with that, people in that extended warranty, if that's something the committee wants, that would make me feel better.
Thank you. I think you're right. Ms. Graham, welcome back to state and local government. Do you have any comments or questions about the legislation as it's being presented and now being modified just a bit?
Thank you, Representative Matlack, and distinguished members of state and local government committee. We did review this to the greatest extent. It really does only apply to public improvements that either municipalities receive state funding for that exceed, I believe it's 25,000, and any competitive bidding process, which essentially does only affect the school building situation. However, MUBEC is the law of the land as far as building requirements go, so we don't have any problems with that language. All of those competitive building pieces and even the pieces for public improvements that receive state funding point to state law as that standard. So there is just this general acceptance that as the state moves forward, that those situations change, and they are constantly evolving in a number of different areas, including HVAC systems and electrical systems. So we don't really have a problem with any of the language as it's been presented thus far.
Thank you very much. It appears that we have a little bit of work to do on this. Lynn, would you like for us to come back next week and review the amendment, or is everybody comfortable with Lynn providing the recommended amendment? Representative Bryant.
Thank you. I'd hate to hold it up, but I do still feel that we want people representing the people before I feel comfortable making a move, even though we know it's timely. I like to have a consensus amongst Ms. Warwick and Anya and whoever the union representatives are, so they're all in agreement that we're not any way making it less for the people. I think they had agreement to 2026, so there was already a discussion, but until that's done, I'd prefer not to vote on it. I'd feel better.
Thank you. Shall we table this bill until Lynn has a proposal for us? Would you like to make a motion to table, Representative Bryant?
Well, I spoke on it. I probably shouldn't, but if it's appropriate, so move, table the bill. But we should be able to do it right off. I mean, shouldn't just a discussion we need.
Okay. Is there a second to table this? Representative Toole, several people tabling. All in favor of tabling this bill and pending an amendment? That's unanimous of all those on screen. Thank you very much. And appreciate Ms. Wallach, Ms. Graham, and Ms. Trundy coming by to clarify matters for us. Thank you very much. Do we have any further business today, Lynn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had scheduled the roads bill to be on for today, but it's not quite ready for prime time. So that was going to be a language review. So, and another bill that I was hoping to get some language reviews done today, but that is not going to happen, unfortunately. And I will just point out that, we have nothing more for today. And I just will let you all know that we will not be getting together until February 28th because you have 2 session days and a holiday. But I will try and have quite a lot of work for you to do when you get here on the 28th.
Right. I'm going to grab up my calendar while I'm sitting here. We had mentioned a Friday. We had mentioned perhaps on the 25th meeting to hear so that we don't wait 2 weeks to because next Monday is President's Day, followed by a session day. So that would be the 28th. Did we want to be able to meet on the 25th so that we don't get too far behind? Cheryl McGowan. Yes.
No, I'll let Representative Toole go.
Okay, thank you. Representative Toole.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I realize for the benefit of the full committee, that was a discussion between myself and Representative Matlack about the idea of meeting and doing public hearings on the 25th. And then with whatever business we have left, I know we're getting a couple of bills this week or very soon, so that we would be able to basically schedule public hearings for the remainder of our work and have a public and do that on the 25th, and with the goal of doing work sessions on the 28th. I personally think it's something we should do, because if we wait until the 28th and then potentially only meet once that week, then we're into the second week of March, first full week of March before we're getting work done. And I know we've got to have work completely done by the 11th. So I think it would give us more time to get our work done if we met on the 25th.
Thank you. Representative Copeland.
Thank you. I agree that we will need to meet again in addition to what's already scheduled, so that we can, get things moving. However, I'm not available on Fridays due to work commitments.
Right. I know that. That's one of the reasons that Representative Toole and I talked about public hearings, because no decisions are made on those days. And so you could review the public hearing at your leisure over the weekend.
Yeah.
And then on Monday, you would be able to participate in discussions, that we wouldn't be voting on anything on that Friday, and that materials would be available for people to review prior to discussing them on Monday, if that works for you. I know it's not the same as being there, but it is the difference between a public hearing where we hear testimony and any further comments or questions regarding this matter? Cheryl?
It's not on this matter, sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay.
Don't forget me, though.
I won't. Lynn Caswell.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make sure the committee's aware, as of right now, there's only one bill that is ready to be scheduled for a public hearing, and that's the Wyndham Roads. So by Wednesday, there may be more, but right now there's only one.
Okay. Representative Toole?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I thought we had referred out 2 or 3 last week. And maybe I'm wrong on that. I think Cheryl may have received one. In any case, I know we're getting the Knox County bill. We're getting what's the inactive boards and commissions. We're getting the GEA bill. The thought would be that we would have all of those on the 25th, if indeed we get them this week, and hopefully we can implore the presiding officers to get them to us this week so we can get the hearings scheduled.
Okay. I'll send it out, or Lynn can send a note and ask that they be expedited so that we don't lose 2 weeks. Representative Copeland.
Wondering why we couldn't do it the day before on the 24th. That roads issue is important, and I'd like to be a part of that.
Mostly because both Lynn and Cheryl have Tuesdays and Thursday committees already scheduled.
Could we meet later in the day instead of earlier in the day on a Tuesday or Thursday? Instead of the early?
Lynn Caswell?
So I am generally free on Thursdays. My other committee, Marine, generally does not meet, though I can't guarantee, particularly if the budget is released. And the appropriations schedules hearings. So I guess I should have just left my hand down and said, no, I'm not available on Tuesdays or Thursdays.
Thank you. They do have their commitments early on, and while generally speaking, for example, we're active on Monday and Wednesday mornings mostly. Last Tuesday, marine resources went far into the afternoon. So you can't really depend on committees to finish their business early, and just when you do, they don't. Representative Reisman. And again, we won't be voting on that bill until Monday. It would be a bill that came in for a public hearing, and then we would vote on Monday. Representative Reisman.
Thank you. Just wondering the status of LD 859, which is the ranked choice voting for municipalities. Did I miss something? Or do we follow up on that yet?
Thank you, Miss Representative Reisman. That bill was on one of the calendars to be discussed today. I removed it because I have received feedback from Maine Municipal Association that I have not yet processed intellectually to be able to comment and share it with you.
Okay, so that will be wow, 28.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes,
Right.
unfortunately, with 2 session days and a holiday, we don't have a lot of meeting times coming up.
Right, exactly. Okay. Any further questions or comments? It's the best we can do is have public hearings on a Friday, and then have the work sessions the following Monday, so that people can hear the information, process the information, and be able to come back on Monday and vote on the bills. So tomorrow afternoon, the chairs and the leads meet regularly on Tuesday afternoons, and we will discuss that and come back with a schedule coming up for everybody. But it will generally involve the 25th, having public hearings. Okay. All right. Well, thank you all very much. I'm sorry, I forgot all about Cheryl. Cheryl.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm going to have to bug you a little more so you don't forget. I just want to remind all committee members to check their emails. We are having jackets signed. I have 2 jackets ready to go when Lynn gets the amendment, except I need 1 signature on each jacket. So please, I did send that email out at 10:42 and 10:44. Representative Head, you should have those 2 emails in your box. And if you could just reply back to the email, you don't need to call anybody, just reply your approval back to the email, and those will be ready when Lynn's ready. Because it's all about Lynn.
It is, isn't it?
Thank you very much, but I'm having such a hard time with my computer that sometimes those emails don't come in for a couple of days, and they're coming Saturday to fix it, whatever. They're coming Saturday to fix my server.
Will Wednesday in person be fine?
Yes.
Cheryl? Okay.
Oh, yeah. That would be perfect. I can come find you.
There you go.
I'll come visit you.
There you go.
There.
All
so
right.
if I don't hear from you today, I'll come find you.
That would be great. That would be great. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you all very much for your hard work this morning, and I really appreciate all your efforts. And I will see you in person on Wednesday. Bye.
Thank you, Anne. You do a great job.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you, Francis, and happy Valentine's Day.